What if I told you that the true fall of Troy had nothing to do with burning walls or wooden horses? Forget everything the Greeks wanted you to believe, because the real story is much darker, messier, and far more fascinating. Behind the glory of Achilles and Hector, hidden in the ashes of war, there was a forgotten chapter. The secret lives of their sons. Heroes were supposed to end wars, not give birth to monsters. Yet what destiny awaited those born from blood and betrayal? In this journey, you won't just hear another retelling. You'll uncover the prophecies, rituals, and hidden wars that the gods of Olympus themselves tried to erase from history. Ready to dive into the myths they never wanted you to know? Hey, before we continue, why not give a little support? Hit that subscribe button and leave a like to show you truly believe in this content. Your participation makes all the difference in helping us bring you the best. The fall of Troy was not just the end of a city, it was the beginning of a deep scar in the history of the Greeks. When the great heroes like Achilles and Hector clashed, they weren't just fighting for pride or territory, they were moving the strings of powerful prophecies woven by the gods themselves. The war left Olympus rumbling, as if the titans of old had returned for vengeance. Imagine a place where every stone and broken wall whispered myths of glory and tragedy. Even monsters seemed to mourn the ruins, as if sensing the shift in the very fabric of destiny. Rituals were performed by the survivors, desperate to appease angry deities. Yet no ritual could rebuild what had been lost. Troy's destruction rippled across the ancient world like a cursed echo. Those who survived carried heavy destinies, tied forever to the ruins and the blood spilled there. The gods, divided between favor and wrath, watched as heroes became legends, and then forgotten memories. It's almost ironic. Men who fought to etch their names into mythology ended up becoming warnings in forgotten songs. Greeks would tell tales around fires, speaking of the war that shook Olympus and cracked the earth beneath the Titans' feet. Troy wasn't just a battlefield, it became a symbol of pride destroyed by arrogance. History, in all its brutality, remembered the lesson, even when men chose to forget. In the aftermath, the sons and daughters of the fallen wandered through shattered lands. Many believed they were cursed by the gods, marked by the rituals gone wrong and the monsters unleashed during the war. Some sought redemption through new battles, others through founding cities, trying to escape their blood-stained destinies. The prophecies, however, whispered otherwise. Those born of Troy's ashes shall carry its ruin in their veins. It's chilling to think that even in victory, the Greeks realized they had unleashed something darker than any monster, an eternal myth of loss. And this myth would soon weave new tragedies. One can almost hear the old priests muttering as they rebuilt their temples, "Beware the cost of angering Olympus." Their voices blended with the broken chants of those few who dared perform rituals for the fallen. If only the heroes had listened. If only the Greeks had heeded the warnings of the gods and the Titans, perhaps Troy would have stood proud alongside Olympus instead of smoldering in shame. But in mythology, as in life, destiny has a cruel sense of humor. The ruins of Troy would not just haunt history, they would forge the paths of future generations. And one secret story, buried among the ruins, was about to rise. While the Greeks celebrated their so-called victory, a quieter mythology was being written in the shadows, the legend of the sons of Achilles and Hector. Forgotten by the grand histories and ignored by the songs sung on Olympus, these children carried bloodlines that the gods themselves had once feared. Born from war and bound by prophecy, they were destined for stories even darker than those of their fathers. Imagine young warriors growing under the same stars that watched Troy burn, knowing that their very existence was a dangerous ritual. Even the monsters of the time seemed to sense that these heirs would either rebuild or destroy what remained. The sons were whispers in a world still trembling from the clash of titans and heroes. Some claimed the gods hid them away to protect what little balance remained between Olympus and the mortal realm. Others believed darker forces plotted to use their destinies for revenge. Rituals were secretly performed to shield the boys from curses, yet myths say the spells were as fragile as a spider's web. These forgotten heirs were not just children, they were living prophecies, breathing proof that no war ends cleanly. In every dusty village and ruined temple, echoes of their names hinted at the power they could one day unleash. Take Achilles' son, for example. young Neoptolemus, known in scattered Greek tales as a figure of both hope and horror. His deeds would later be painted in the colors of blood and fire, an unsettling reminder that even heroes breed monsters when war poisons the soul. On the other side, Hector's supposed heir remained cloaked in more mystery. Some myths whisper that he was hidden far from Troy, raised among strangers, taught secret rituals meant to awaken the blood of the Titans. In either case, their stories were not just about survival. They were about reshaping a world still raw with grief and anger. It's curious how history forgets the ones who mattered most when the dust settles. The Greeks, so obsessed with their victories and offerings to the gods, failed to see that their greatest test had only just begun. Monsters born from war aren't always grotesque beasts. Sometimes they are beautiful, tragic souls, carrying within them the embers of cities like Troy. These sons, tangled in their father's legacies and the intricate threads of prophecy, stood at the crossroads of new myths. And their next steps would either save the remnants of the ancient world or doom it forever. In the smoldering silence after Troy's fall, secret births unfolded like hidden chapters of a forbidden mythology. The sons of Achilles and Hector were not born under the open sky, where the gods could lay their eyes upon them, but hidden deep within sanctuaries far from Olympus's gaze. These births were not mere accidents. They were woven into prophecies older than the Titans themselves. Imagine priests and priestesses performing rituals in abandoned temples, praying to the forgotten gods for mercy or favor. Every heartbeat of these newborns echoed both war and hope, tangled in the invisible threads of destiny. Even the most hardened Greeks whispered of them as if fearing to call attention to such dangerous promises. Their mothers, whether royal captives or noble survivors, knew the price of bringing such blood into a world already drenched in sorrow. Some were guided by desperate visions granted by mysterious deities, while others simply clung to the fragile idea that not all heroes' legacies had to end in tragedy. Rituals of protection were woven into the boys' lives from their very first breath. But could any mortal charm truly deceive the gods? From the moment their cries filled the cold air, the myths surrounding them began to grow, feeding the monsters of rumor and the destinies that clung to their bloodlines. Secrecy was their cradle and their curse. Raised in exile, far from the Greeks who might have sought their destruction, they learned early that their very names carried weight heavier than any sword. Teachers chosen by those still loyal to Troy, or perhaps by agents of Olympus themselves, trained them in both war and wisdom. Lessons in history were not about glory, but about survival. They memorized myths not for admiration, but for warnings. They were children, yes, but also living rituals meant to challenge or fulfill prophecies that even the Titans would have feared to face again. And so, as the years passed, these hidden heirs grew into figures of quiet, potent strength. Every move they made, every decision, was haunted by the question: would they repeat the mistakes of their fathers, or forge a new path beyond the ruins of war? Destiny, after all, is a monster with many faces, and even the brightest soul can be swallowed by its hunger. But one thing was clear: the blood of Achilles and Hector would not remain silent forever. It stirred, waiting for the moment to rise and rewrite history once more. As the sons of Achilles and Hector grew, it became clear that the rivalry between their fathers had not died with the fall of Troy. It had merely changed hands. Fueled by ancient grudges and the haunting whispers of prophecy, these young men found themselves torn between inherited hatred and the slim hope of redemption. The Greeks, ever eager to see new wars erupt, watched closely, while the gods on Olympus placed secret wagers on their destinies. Some monsters are born of rage, others of sorrow, and sometimes they wear the face of a hero. In every ritual, in every lesson whispered late at night, the weight of choice pressed heavier on their shoulders. It wasn't simply about revenge or justice, it was about identity. How does one born of war forge a life beyond it? Raised on stories of blood and betrayal, each boy became a living myth, a breathing question mark in the history of the Greeks. When they met, some tales say in a ruined temple, others by chance in a dark forest, the tension was thick enough to slice with a bronze blade. Would they draw swords and continue the cycle as the gods expected? Or would they defy the rituals written in their blood and seek peace? Even the Titans, imprisoned and bitter, are said to have paused to watch. For young heirs, the world offered no simple path. Allies of their fathers lurked in shadows, whispering counsel heavy with old rage. Rituals were performed, omens were read, and monsters, both real and symbolic, rose to push them toward violence. But somewhere deep inside, perhaps in the soft prayers their mothers once whispered, there remained a seed of redemption. It said that the stars shifted on the night they faced each other, as if Olympus itself was holding its breath. Not every story of mythology ends in blood, but those that do carve the deepest scars into history. Thus, standing on the crumbling ruins of a world shattered by the Greeks' ambition and the gods' cruelty, the sons of Achilles and Hector had to choose: continue the war that destroyed Troy, or create a new legend powerful enough to silence even the monsters of old. And somewhere, hidden behind veils of time and rituals long forgotten, new alliances, darker and more surprising, were beginning to form. In the ashes of Troy's ruin, unexpected alliances began to take root. Quiet, fragile, yet more powerful than any sword raised in war. The sons of Achilles and Hector, bound by shared loss more than hatred, found themselves reaching across the ancient divide. It was as if destiny, tired of watching heroes fall, whispered a different prophecy into their ears. Greeks who once cheered for Troy's destruction now muttered in confusion as rumors spread, old enemies breaking bread together. Even the gods of Olympus stirred uneasily, for this defiance of rituals threatened the balance they so carefully maintained. Some said it was madness, others called it the birth of a new myth. These secret pacts were not forged in royal halls or under the blessings of proud heroes. No, they were built in the wilds, among broken temples and lands where monsters still prowled. Young warriors trained side by side, their blades sharp, but their spirits sharper still. They performed hidden rituals under forgotten stars, invoking the Titans' ancient strength rather than the whims of petty gods. The Greeks, obsessed with their crumbling traditions, could not comprehend it. Alliances born of tragedy rather than conquest. It was a dangerous game, a dance between hope and destruction, and one misstep could awaken ancient curses sleeping just beneath the soil. Imagine it. A son of Achilles teaching a son of Hector the secret strikes that once shattered Trojan shields. Or a son of Hector, revealing hidden paths through sacred lands once blessed by Olympus itself. These small acts, these moments of trust, wove a new mythology beneath the Greeks' blind eyes. And yet, danger lurked with every heartbeat. Old loyalties still burned hot among the elders, and monsters of suspicion and betrayal crept into every shadow. Rituals meant to bind them together also reminded them of the past, of fathers who once swore to see each other's blood spill onto Troy's stones. But perhaps that was the true genius of it, embracing the darkness of their shared destinies to forge a light strong enough to challenge the will of the gods. As secret as these alliances remained, the echoes of their steps shook Olympus itself, and deep within those trembling halls, ancient powers began to whisper of another threat growing, not just between men, but within the bloodlines cursed by war and sorrow. No great mythology is complete without betrayal, and the cursed bloodlines of Achilles and Hector were no exception. The fragile alliances formed between their sons carried the weight of too many broken oaths and too many rituals designed to honor vengeance over peace. It didn't take long before whispers of treachery slithered through the ranks like unseen monsters. Some claimed that the prophecies had never promised redemption, only a more spectacular ruin. Even the Greeks, masters of betrayal themselves, watched eagerly as cracks formed. Olympus, ever entertained by mortal folly, stirred the pot with subtle omens and misleading dreams. One betrayal led to another, like dominoes falling in slow, cruel succession. A trusted friend turned assassin, a brother in arms revealed as a double agent. Rituals meant to protect became traps, exposing the sons to ancient curses older than even the Titans' rebellion. Myths tell of one fateful night when blood was spilled on a forgotten altar, a sacrifice not demanded by the gods, but by ambition and fear. History repeated itself with terrifying precision, and the monsters born from these new betrayals made the ones of old seem almost merciful. It's as if the destinies carved into their veins could not be outrun, only fulfilled. The malice spread beyond their circle, poisoning those who once dreamed of a future rebuilt from Troy's ashes. Towns that had barely begun to rise from ruin collapsed under waves of suspicion and revenge. Rituals turned darker, invoking spirits not from Olympus, but from the deepest chasms where forgotten titans slept. Greeks and Trojans alike, who once dared hope for peace, now found themselves caught in a storm older than memory itself. Betrayal, it seems, was not merely an act but a cycle, fed by fear, anger, and the endless hunger for power, a monster no sword could slay. Amid this chaos, the surviving sons realized a terrible truth. They were not free men forging a new world. They were puppets, dancing to the ancient songs of war and hatred sung by the very gods they thought they could defy. As the skies above Olympus darkened with the scent of blood, a final reckoning loomed. And somewhere, perhaps guided by a darker prophecy, the stage was being set for a last, brutal confrontation where the old grudges would erupt once again. The final clash between the sons of Achilles and Hector felt less like a choice and more like an inevitable ritual, one the gods had scripted long before Troy's walls crumbled. Despite their dreams of peace, destiny demanded its due. Beneath stormy skies, where the echoes of past heroes still lingered, they met in combat not as men, but as living myths. Every strike of the sword, every clash of shield against shield, felt like Olympus itself judging them. Greeks gathered to witness, whispering old prayers to the gods who had once smiled upon their fathers. Even the monsters in the shadows seemed to hold their breath, sensing the weight of history unfolding once again. Their duel was no ordinary battle. It was a dance of sorrow, fury, and reluctant duty. Rituals had taught them that honor must be defended at any cost, but deep in their hearts, they knew this was not truly their war. The blood they spilled was cursed, born of ancient grudges, and with each wound the myths of old tightened their grip. Spectators would later speak of the Titans' roars heard in the wind and the way Olympus trembled with every blow. It was a battle that wasn't supposed to be won, only survived. The Greeks hoped it would end the cycle of revenge. The gods, however, simply reveled in the spectacle. In those brutal moments, both sons saw the full horror of their destinies. They realized that war had been woven into their very beings, a ritual performed by ancestors who could not imagine another path. Myths would later claim that the spirits of Achilles and Hector watched from beyond, weeping and shouting in vain to stop the bloodshed. But the pull of fate was too strong, a monster too ancient to resist. Each heir fought not just for pride, but against the invisible chains of prophecy itself, a losing battle, yet one they could not refuse. And when the dust finally settled, when the blood of both Greek and Trojan had soaked the earth once more, a strange silence fell. It wasn't the triumphant hush of a war won. It was the empty, broken breath of a history repeating itself yet again. But somewhere in that silence, among the cracked stones and forgotten rituals, a deeper question began to stir. Had Troy truly fallen because of the Greeks' might, or was there a darker, far more devastating legacy at work all along? The true ruin of Troy was never its shattered walls or fallen towers. It was the poisoned legacy that endured long after the war ended. Greeks often boasted of their triumph, singing songs of heroes and gods, but few dared to whisper about the true monsters they had unleashed. Generations bound by hatred, betrayal, and broken rituals. Mythology taught them that the greatest wars are fought not with swords, but within the hearts of men. It wasn't Olympus's wrath that doomed Troy. It was the heavy, invisible chains of old destinies, dragging each new heir into the same tragic cycle. Even the Titans might have wept at such cruel irony. Every prophecy fulfilled, every ritual performed, only deepened the curse. The sons of Achilles and Hector became tragic echoes of their fathers, proving that history does not repeat by accident. It repeats because no one dares to change the myth. Greeks, Trojans, monsters. They were all caught in the same web spun by gods too proud to release their creations. Even the most desperate acts of heroism could not break free from a legacy drenched in sorrow. To survive, one would need more than a sword or a prayer. They would need to rewrite destiny itself, to challenge the very foundation of Olympus's ancient games. What remained of Troy was not its stones, but the scars carved into its people's souls. Rituals became hollow performances, traditions twisted into weapons, and hope faded like smoke in the ruins. The Greeks returned home, only to find their lands cursed by the same arrogance that destroyed Troy. Heroes who survived the war often met tragic ends, proving that victory over a city meant little when the true war raged within. History, mythology, and rituals blurred together, creating a tangled narrative where no one truly won. The greatest monster of all was not the armies outside the walls, it was the legacies they left behind. And so the real question echoes through time. If Troy's fall was not its final tragedy, but only the beginning of an endless spiral, what hope remains for those who carry its blood? Perhaps the answer lies not in the glory of Olympus or the tales of the Greeks, but in the forgotten whispers of those who dared to dream of breaking free. Whispers that even now might yet awaken a new prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. And now I leave you with a burning question. Will you continue to live trapped by the stories others wrote for you, or will you be bold enough to break free from old destinies, just like the forgotten sons of Troy dared to dream? If the Greeks, the gods, and even the monsters of mythology couldn't escape their own cycles, what makes you think it's easy? But maybe that's exactly why you must try. Because rewriting your own history could be the greatest legacy you ever leave behind. I noticed you haven't left a like yet, so now's the perfect time to do it. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and before you go, I'll leave 2 videos on the screen that you're definitely going to love. Thanks for watching and see you in the next adventure.